I was born in Baltimore, Maryland, the 18th of October, 1931.
How did you enter the military?
Well, I attended Howard University and was commissioned through that source,
Through
the ROTC, and from there I went to pilot training.
What year was that you were commissioned?
54. The Korean War was over,
Yeah.
and I had to wait a long time to get a pilot training slot.
Really?
Because they were reducing the number of pilots that they needed, as a matter of fact, just during the time I was coming on board.
Yeah.
It took me about 18 or 19 months just to get a pilot training slot. No, I drove a cab in Baltimore until I was called up.
Until they were calling
In
you.
fact, I was called, I had orders 3 times before they became official. They were canceled, that is. I was given orders to report, then they were canceled, yeah. That happened about 3 or 4 times. I trained in Bartow, Florida. Yeah, that was in 1955, January 22nd, 55. That was back during the time when the Air Force had civilian contractors for primary pilot training. They had about 7 or 8 civilian bases throughout the country. And I went to the contract school there at Bartow, Florida. And that was about like 6 months worth.
What they teach you to fly?
They taught me the Super Cub PA-18, which was militarized at the time, so you had toe brakes and things like that,
Yeah.
that you would find in other aircraft. And it was a 2-seater. And in fact, I saw that particular airplane in the museum at Lowry in Denver, Colorado last week.
Your plane.
Yeah, I thought so. It was very interesting to see that.
If they had a 76-mile-an-hour headwind, that thing could stand
still. You're about right. Also, after Bartow, I graduated in the upper 10% of my class, so I had a choice, you know, bombers or fighters. So I chose fighters, which I always wanted to fly, because the Tuskegee Airmen was my influence.
That's your
back
influence.
in the day. Yes.
Yeah.
In fact, I used to read about those guys in the Afro-American and the Pittsburgh Courier, and I started building airplanes. In fact, I started taking flying lessons when I was 16. So that progressed on until I graduated from college, and I knew I was going into the Air Force to fly. I forgot to say this, but I graduated from pilot training when I received my wings at Laredo Air Force Base in Texas, right down the road a piece, if you will, from here.
Yeah.
And from there, I went to Bergstrom in an F-84 squadron. That was the 560th up in the 12th Wing. I've been in the 12th Wing several times during my career, as a matter of fact. I was in it into Korea. I don't want to jump ahead of your questions, but the 12th Wing I seem to follow throughout my career.
So from the F-84, you transitioned to what plane?
I transferred to the F-100 at Nellis. What I did when I got to Bergstrom, I decided I wanted to fly a faster aircraft. So I applied through the Air Force channels to go into the F-100 training. And sure enough, I received that opportunity about a year and a half after I was at Bergstrom.
Isn't that the one they called a Widowmaker?
I don't know about that, but they had to do a heavy modification of that aircraft as far as the stabilizer is concerned, horizontal stabilizer. We called it a split tail, where you had an aileron that went up and down, and then finally they changed the whole thing to a slab, so it had dynamic effect when you were pulling out of a dive. I think it had an engine problem to start with. Between the stators and the rotors of the, I think it was the J65 engine, if you flew through a cloud, you probably had a problem because of the coefficient of expansion based between the stages of the rotors and the stators. So
that ain't good.
Not at all. I think we lost a few aircraft that way too. As I said earlier, I checked out an F-100 at Nellis, and then there were 3 of us that were assigned to the 45th Fighter Day Squadron in Sidi Slimane, Africa, in Morocco. And sure enough, when we got to New Assur on a MATS aircraft, a sergeant came up the stairs and called our three names and said, "Come with me." So we followed him and found out our assignment was changed to Wheelers Air Base, Tripoli, Libya. So the first question I asked, where's Libya? Because I had never heard of it at that point. But it turned out to be USAF, the USAF, United States Air Forces in Europe Weapons Center. And my boss was the famous Robin Olds, and he checked me out in the F-86. That's what they had there at the time. So I flew the F-86 for about 2 years until they got rid of it. But let me tell you what the big secret was. 3 months after we arrived, the three of us, the F-100s from City Slimane came to wheel us. And the three of us became the instructor pilots for the whole gunnery group.
The whole squadron.
I can't say I checked out Robin Olds, but I can say this. I chased him while he did his checkout. And he was my boss, and he checked me out in the F-86 both day and night. And it was a pleasure to fly with that guy.
I mean, imagine. He was a
super
guy. Hell of a guy.
Yes, sir.
Now you transitioned from the Widowmaker to the F-4.
F-86 to the F-4. Now it turned out that my former boss, Frank K. Evers, he retired as a Brigadier General. At the time he was a colonel, and he was the commander of that training wing of F-4s. And when I left the ROTC program at Tuskegee as the Commandant of Cadets, I was sort of looking for a job because first of all, I had orders to go to Vietnam as a FAC in 01, I guess it was, in the 23rd Tactical Air Support Squadron. And I didn't think I wanted to do that. So I knew where General Everest was. And
you want something flew a little faster?
Yeah, and with a little more protection. So sure enough, I implored him to, in fact, he told me when I visited him at where was it? England Air Force Base, that if there's anything I could do for me, he could do for me, just give him a call. So I took him up on it, and sure enough, he hired me as an instructor to go out to, as an instructor, I became out at Davis-Monthan in the 4453rd Wing, the 4456 Squadron. And that was a good tour. But
that was in the F-4.
That was in the F-4, yes. And I think I arrived there, and I think it was 1965. Yes, 65. I left Tuskegee and went right to Davis-Monthan. Checked out in the F-4, and after about 10 rides, I became an instructor. And we were all frozen. All the instructors were frozen because we were training other units in the F-4. And folks from England, the 81st Wing, for example. And then we had the Iranians. We also had the Israelis. So we were training foreign pilots.
Americans?
Yes, and Americans.
Everybody.
Yes.
How'd you like that F-4?
Well, I'll tell you, that was my number one airplane. Of all the aircraft I've ever flown, that was my number one. I flew the C, the D, and the E. And we had the E in Korea when I was commander of the 51st Wing, and that was the ultimate aircraft of that series,
Yeah.
the E, I thought.
Beautiful airplane.
Beautiful, handled well, and it was a fast mover. And as long as you kept, as we call it, kept your smash up, you could do anything, beat anybody in the air.
Yeah.
But don't slow down.
Don't slow down.
Don't slow down. That's
It's
right.
a long climb back up.
Well, some people didn't climb back up because they allowed their Mach to, or that smash, as we call it, to degrade in flight. And of course, now you're fighting the other fight,
Yeah.
where the other aircraft had an advantage at slower speeds. I left in November, left Davis-Monthan in November of '66, and went to, landed at Clark. As a matter of fact, I know a specific date. It was the 31st of October, because as we flew west and landed at Clark, one of the flight supervisor came on board and said, "Welcome to Clark Air Base, the Philippines. Today is November the 1st. And one of the guys yelled, I said, "What happened to the 31st? That's my birthday." It was gone.
It's gone.
He made up for it coming back home.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. At Clark, we went through what we call survival school, jungle survival school. Euphemistically, we called it snake school, because that taught us how to survive in the jungle, as a matter of fact. And then they put us in the jungle to try to escape from the Negritos, these little guys. And for every guy they captured, they'd get a bowl of rice or a package of rice.
Yeah.
So they were enthusiastic about
They're enthusiastic opponents.
I fooled them all.
Did you?
Yeah, I went up to the highest hill and laid up there on top until the exercise was over. I had some friends up there too. Huge rats.
Oh my!
I mean,
eat them?
Oh no. They ran from me as I ran I ran from them. They ran from me. Yeah. From there, I went to Cameron Bay.
Did you fly your F-4 in? Or
Oh no, they were there.
They were there.
I was in the 559th Squadron, 12th Wing, which was the second time I'd been in the 12th. And I flew 201 missions there in combat.
Tell me about your first arrival and landing in Vietnam. What your impressions were.
Well, I arrived in a C-130 that I had caught in the Philippines, and it took me right to Cameron Bay. Well, it stopped in Seoul and a few other places before it got to Cameron Bay, but ultimately that's where I wound up. And I reported to the 559th, and the gentleman who was escorting me said, he took me to my quarters and he said, if you don't mind, I have a flight this afternoon, but I'll be back to see you. Well, I saw him 7 years later because we lost 4 aircraft that day. It was devastating, and to the wing. But it was one of those things where the guys were going in through an overcast, but they went through this big hole, and all the guns in North Vietnam were aimed at that big hole, I guess, and we lost 4 aircraft.
It concentrated the whole thing.
Yeah, all the missiles and air-to-ground, ground-to-air weaponry at that hole. So we did lose 4. And I think all came back except one of the officers that was, I think, killed en route, on the way down. Never showed up. A chute never showed up.
Right.
But his back seater was recovered, but he didn't come back.
He didn't make it.
No, he didn't make it. That was my welcome.
That was your welcome.
Yeah, and then eventually I became the assistant ops officer. I was ops officer for a while until Major came in. I was a captain. As a matter of fact, I was the principal scheduler for the squadron.
How'd you rate the general flying conditions in Southeast Asia from the U.S. or North Africa?
Well, you had definitive climate changes. In other words, Cameron Bay basically separated the north area of weather from the south area of weather. And of course, one time during the year, it was a 6-month cycle. You had rain, showers, and so forth, there.
Hot and wet.
Hot. That's exactly right. It always stayed hot.
Yeah.
Usually, it got a little cool in the wintertime, but we never had any snow or anything like that. But it was a good experience, I thought. A lot of guys built their flying time there. My first mission was a Sunday morning, and I was fragged for a strike in North Vietnam. And of course, when the intelligence folks briefed us, I looked around the room, and not too many people were paying strict attention, but they were telling me that there are about 50 air-to-ground guns in that area. I said air-to-ground, ground-to-air, excuse me. They had the ZPUs, which was a 4-barrel weapon, as you probably well know. And sure enough, when I came, we fanned out, the 3 of us, and when I rolled in, as soon as I was leveled out with the target and was ready to pickle, I saw something in front of me, a big boiling black thing that turned red, fire. So I started jinking away from my initial track and reacquired the target. And my backseater, who was a instructor with me at Davis Mountain, I said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm jinking, man. They're firing at us." He said, "Jink on." So I finally got the target acquired, and as I pulled off, most guys break left. I broke right, and sure enough, the explosion had tracked me to go that way. And then my squadron commander, who was leading the flight, called me, said, "Timmy, are you okay?" Because he saw what was happening as far as my being tracked. That was the first 85 millimeter radar control gun in that area of North Vietnam.
Man.
First one. Of course, the Navy took it out that night.
Good.
Yeah. Because we reported it, exactly where we were and so forth and so on. And it was radar control, and naturally the Navy had all of these sophisticated tracking and finding devices.
They got the armed missiles.
They got everything. They had everything and took care of business that night.
Yeah.
But our reporting, put it in the system.
So you took your target out and you went home.
I went home. I tell you what, in that flight, there were 6 of us. They had 3 aircraft, all of whom, 7 of whom were white, okay? And then coming back home, we were all white.
You were all white.
That's right. Yes, there were several, and they all had to do with weaponry. They were able to put fuse extenders on certain weapons, the bombs, I should say, that allowed us to drop a real large or heavyweight bomb that would actually make a clearing for the helicopters that would be landing, the Army helicopters. Huh?
Daisy cutters.
Well, that's what I'm glad you know that. Yeah, that's what we call them, daisy cutters, and
Yeah.
they worked quite well for the Hueys that were taking the troops in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They could sure saw down some trees.
Instantly. Yeah. Yeah. That was one, and then
That's one.
and then we had another. I'll call it CBU 24. It was an anti-personnel weapon.
Yeah, the CBU.
Yes, and that was a new weapon. We could not drop that weapon without approval from 7th Air Force, but we carried it just in case. And it was an anti-personnel thing, and being in that category, we had strict rules, and the strictest being that we could not drop at will. We had to have approval from higher headquarters.
Why?
That was the rules, ROE, rules of engagement.
Boy, we sure dropped them all over the place in the Gulf.
Well, that was later on. Yeah. We learned our lesson, finally. Leave the war up to the warriors.
There was an awful lot of messing with pilots and missions in Vietnam and surrounding countries.
A lot of careers were ruined, too. I'll just say that once and no more.
Yeah. But when politicians are picking targets.
Well, it's not good for the warrior nor the country or the pursuit of the war. Because I would say this very flatly and bluntly, nobody knows how to fight a war except the military. And if we are ever given the opportunity to be involved in the war, don't call us unless you want to win. Go through the State Department, do whatever you have to do, but don't call on the military for a political war.
Yeah.
We are the last resort. That is the military, and we should be treated that way.
Now, you flew strike missions north, close air support in the south, missions in Laos.
I can't say that.
You can't say that.
There were missions in Laos, truthfully, yeah.
Yeah.
But we couldn't report that.
Yeah.
It's well known now that we did have missions over there.
But you flew all kinds of missions.
I did. Well, there were 2. One specifically was in North Vietnam. And what happened, I rolled in on the target. I had a 3-ship aircraft, a 3-ship formation. And I rolled in on the target. I had 6 750-pound bombs on each wing, three on left and right. And I rolled in and on the target, and I pickled my bombs off and pulled off the target. And as soon as I pulled off the target, my right wing dipped, which made me know that my right rack didn't go off. So I put it in burner and did a big whiffadil while my other two guys were on the target. And when I came back down, I released my three on the right side. And I knew they released because when I pulled out straight. But then I felt this bump, boom. And I said, gee whiz, there must be some jet wash, okay, from the other two aircraft.
Yeah.
So we go out to the tanker, and of course I assumed lead again. Went out to the tanker, and it was supposed to be a silent refueling. And the boom operator broke silence and said, F4 in its pre-contact position, you have part of your right wing missing. There was a big what from me.
What?
And I asked my pilot, my backseat pilot, I said, where? Can you see the right wingtip? He said, no, I can't, but I can see the left. I couldn't see either from the front seat of the F4. And sure enough,
it was gone.
It was gone. And there was a hole in that dihedral about like so. And what had happened, an 85 millimeter round went right through that dihedral. It didn't explode. It was not fused correctly. And therefore, I wound up with a big hole rather than a destroyed aircraft.
Yeah, that would have taken you down.
If it had gone off, yes, it would have been devastating. But I landed, I got off the tanker and did a controllability check down to a good landing speed number, and it flew okay. So after my 2 and 3 got their gas, I pulled into pre-contact position and contact and got a full load. We went back to Cameron Bay. I landed uneventfully, and I have several pictures of me in the refueling area with a whole gang of guys around that airplane because that was a significant hole in that wing. That was number.
So maybe you didn't need that wing.
Well, yeah, you needed it. Yes, indeed. I would suspect the other one I was thinking about was my 200th mission with the flight of 4, and all of whom the aircraft commanders had flown 200 plus missions. And one of my best buddies, I went to his funeral like 2 months ago down in San Antonio. He passed away. Austin, I should have said, Austin, Texas. He passed away. That was Colonel Ed Griskowski. Great guy, dear friend of mine.
Tell me about that 200 mission.
Well, it was a planned mission. It just so happened that the 4 guys that were aircraft commanders, myself included, had all flown 200 plus missions. And we all came back to the States.
Mission itself was nothing special?
No, it wasn't special at all. Oh, here was the other mission. Here's the one I wanted to tell you about. Easter Sunday morning, 1967. I was fragged out on a mission with a Covey FAC up in Route Pack 1. No, it was not Route Pack 1. It was yes, it was Route Pack 1 up in the North Vietnam area. And we got in contact with the FAC, and he asked me a few code words, and I gave the correct answers. And also, he said, well, we have some areas here where we have seen some bad guys and so forth. So he said, I'm going to drop some smoke right in the city. It was a town. So I watched the smoke hit. Then he said, you see that large building that's like 9 o'clock to my smoke? I said, yeah, I see it. He says, I want you to hit it with API, I had armor-piercing incendiary on my cannon. So I was about 6,000 feet out, and I looked, and I said,
this is in North Vietnam.
Yeah, I said, that looks like a church. He said, it is. I said, we have spread leaflets all around that area to tell people to evacuate and so forth. He said, I want you to hit it. And I said, Jesus, Easter Sunday morning. Are you serious? So sure enough, he said, yeah. I rolled in, and I opened fire way out about 6,000 feet. And I said, whoop, you know, I had an M61 cannon. And I watched my traces. I had API, armor piercing incendiary, and it hit the church and blew up. I had to yank and bang and pull so I wouldn't go through the debris. That was used as a weapons storage area for the bad guys.
Yeah.
You know, we wouldn't hit a church, right?
Right.
We did, and it was full of ammo. I mean, that thing smoked for a while. You know, once I got out of the way, you know, I circled at altitude, and that thing was burning. And of course, it was blown to pieces, so to speak. And that was one of the missions that I said, you never know. You just never know. No, you never know. You just have to perform the mission as planned.
Did you have any dealings with the Vietnamese people, either civilian or military, during your tour?
Not directly. No, I didn't. We did have the Korean Army as our protectors. You don't really know the character and the quality of the people you're working with till you get in combat. And then you really know who they are. And fortunately, even though some were very young, you know, first lieutenants and so forth, they were solid citizens. You could count on everybody in my squadron, and I'm sure the other squadrons as well, to do what they were required to do. And they were all professional. We had maybe one or two that was sort of derelict, but you know, that was due to their personalities, I suppose. And yeah, I'm trying to be nice to those that weren't as steadfast as the majority. I would say 99% of everybody there, including the ground crew. And I have to give really a lot of plaudits to the ground crew because they kept eye. For example, that airplane I brought back with that hole in the wing, it was on the schedule next morning, 7 o'clock.
They fixed it.
They fixed it overnight. That's
a hole like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they took off that dihedral of the wing and put another one on overnight.
Did you form friendships with men from different racial, social backgrounds during your time in Vietnam that you might not have had otherwise?
Oh, absolutely. For example, you may remember this name, Guyan Bluford. He was the first black astronaut mission commander. Well, he was at Cameron Bay. And we happened on one, he was in a different squadron, but one time we flew together, you know, for expedience sake, so to speak. Because at the time I was working with the DO, Director of Operations, and I ran the command post for a while because they needed somebody with some sense there that could, you know, instruct some people about aircraft knowledge and so forth, in emergencies and so forth, yeah. And I did that for the last 3 months of my tour. And General McNeil, or then Colonel McNeil, wanted me to sort of build up that operation in the command center because
How many total combat missions did you fly during that tour?
I flew 201.
201?
Yes. So if I had just flown 200, say, why'd you quit at 200? Now at 201, you know, it's not a story anymore.
Not a good story.
Yeah.
What did you do for recreation, off-duty activities, if you had any off-duty time?
I didn't have much, seriously. I put in at least 12 to 14 hours a day in operations, you know.
Time you get a shower and a shave.
Yeah, and you get back on the flight line, yeah. Well, we played, some of the guys, we played bridge, and I pulled a lot of alert duty on the alert pad. I was scrambled off quite a bit, and I don't know, it seemed to follow me. Everybody said, gee whiz, you get out here, we scramble all the time. I said, well, I guess. As a matter of fact, I would give, as assistant ops and scheduler, I would let all the guys go off on Christmas and various holidays, that is. I would take the alert pad because to me, it was away from the crowd. You can read, you can, you know, write letters to mom, and or record tapes to mom while you're out there. You know, waiting. You're fully equipped. You have your G suit on and everything, and all they have to do is let you know when to go. You know, by various means, and you'd run, your airplane's all pre-flighted and ready to go. So it's not much for you to do except get in and go fly. Well, there was an article written on me in Time magazine. And one of the quotes that I said, they asked me a question about the demonstrations back in the States, anti-war demonstrations. I said, well, it's very simple. I'm here to give them that right to do that. This is America. The other countries, you can't do that when in time for war. You know, they'll silence you in a heartbeat in other countries. But in our democracy, in America, that's freedom of speech.
Yeah.
And I left it at that. And that article came out in March of 1967. I think it was March 6th. And it was entitled, the whole front cover was The Negro in Vietnam. And they interviewed a series of people, Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine Corps. And of course, I was the Air Force guy. I flew with a gentleman by the name of Ralph Ellison. And he was killed in Ankh I think he was in a 130 that crashed up there. And but he was a reporter for I think he was a freelance reporter, but he had articles in everything. Yeah. I think he had an article in the Washington Post about me, and then the New York Times came out with another one. And but he was, you know, a great guy. Took plenty of photographs, you know. Yeah, and good at it. Oh, I had several good days, particularly when I heard from the wife. We started making, and it was a mistake to do this, to make tapes.
Yep, a little reel to reel.
Exactly right. And I say, the reason it was a mistake, we would record over. She'd send me a tape, and I would record over it and send it back to her. So the only tape I have left is the last one.
The last
one.
That's right.
And we shouldn't have done that.
If you'd done cassettes, you'd still have them.
Yeah. I still have, you know, that one last tape. I still do. And we just, you know, to me, it was just like being at home, you know, with the tapes.
You can hear her voice.
Yeah, you hear the kids in the background doing this, that, and the other, and so forth. Yeah. First day.
That first day when 4 went down.
Yes, sir. That was the worst day. And of course, we found out subsequently, General Robert J. Dixon, who became the commander of TAC, actually verified this thought, that the worst missions that a fighter pilot can have are his first 10. If he can get past those first 10, he's good to go for the rest of his tour. And watch out for the last 10. You know, in other words, there are other thoughts that come into play.
Yeah.
Boy, just think I'm going home next week. You know, you can't have those kinds of thoughts.
You can't be thinking that until you shut her off for the last time. That's
exactly right. And getting back to General Dixon, that's the gentleman that started Red Flag. You may have heard about that. The war games at Nellis Air Force Base, where everything is duplicated. So these pilots get their first 10 combat sorties in the States, where it's moderately safe, you know. But all of the things that he hears, the APR 2526 to let you know that a SAM is being launched, those kinds of things, you get that real time. You get the aggressors trying to shoot you down, real time. So, you know, it's a total combat situation using all of the factors that you would find in an actual combat situation. And those guys get trained, these youngsters, I should say, get pilots and crews, get trained for their first 10 combat missions right there on the spot at Nellis Air Force Base. And the operation is called Red Flag.
Yeah.
Truthfully, I really didn't have any. I would think that level would be at the wing commander level. He probably had, contacts with.
You knew that the Korean troops were guarding your perimeter.
Oh, I knew that. Oh, yes.
But you weren't dealing with them.
No, I wasn't personally, no.
Yeah.
I knew the CIA was there, but I almost hit one of those airplanes one day. I almost had a midair coming, taking off. Of course, you never knew where they were.
Yeah.
Yeah. Great bunch of guys, though, I understand. Oh, as a matter of fact, I called. I had to go to pick up an airplane at Clark Air Base that had been modified. And I was able to call back home. They had I think it's called Mars outfit there.
I love you, over.
That's right. Oh, my goodness, you've been there.
I've been there.
Yeah. And I was able to talk to them and got all the kids on the phone, hello, Dad, how are you doing? I said, I'm okay, doing fine, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that was a good experience.
That was a good day.
Oh, yeah, absolutely good day.
But you wrote letters?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I have about 160 letters that I've transposed into the book I'm preparing to finish. I've been working on it off and on for the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And I have redacted some of the letters because they're a little too, whatever, husband and wife stuff,
Yeah.
A little more than I love you,
How much news did you receive about the war while you were fighting in it?
Well, strangely enough, we received quite a lot. We had Armed Forces Radio. We had Stars and Stripes,
Yeah.
newspaper,
Yeah.
military newspaper.
Yeah.
And I got feedback from my wife, what she was hearing about the war, which, sort of, sometimes I tell her, that's not true. Don't listen to that.
That ain't right.
That's not the truth. It's not right. Because, sometimes I'll just be candid with you, there was some embellishment by some of the reporters of what was going on. And, we would look at each other and say, that didn't happen, but, let it go at that.
67, 68 was your time.
66, 67.
66, 67.
Right.
Anti-war stuff was just kind of getting cranked
Well,
up.
it was getting cranked up good.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the States.
Back in the States.
Right.
You knew about that.
Oh, yes.
You read about it, heard about it.
That was happening actually before I left to go to Vietnam.
What did you
In
think
60
about that?
Well, again, like I said earlier, that's their life. And I'm here to allow them that opportunity to speak their mind, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And like it's today, everybody has a voice about everything, as you can imagine, more so now than then.
Yeah,
But
and you can spread it a lot faster now.
Yeah, and when you think about it, those kinds of demonstrations, anti-government demonstrations, aren't here today. But there was a cause then to stop the war, if you recall, and I know you do.
Yeah.
And of course, again, when I came back, I wasn't spit on, but I was looked at in disdain when I landed in Washington, the state of Washington.
Seattle.
McCord. It's Tacoma, yeah. Is that McCord Air Force Base?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
Fort Lewis.
Well, that's all a part of
McCord.
it. Yeah, they call it now the joint, whatever.
Joint Base
Jo-
McCord or
That's right.
something.
Yeah. We left Cameron Bay. It was a contracted airplane. I think it was World Airlines.
Oh yeah, Ed Bailey's outfit.
And then we flew to Tokyo, and we landed at Harita. Is that the new airport? Newest. Narita,
Yeah.
newest airport, and it was brand new then. We couldn't even get off the airplane, but anyhow, it landed and refueled, total, tanked up full. And of course, I was a senior ranking guy on the airplane as a major at that point. So we go to the end of the runway and run up. I didn't think twice about it. I heard the pilot run up all 4 engines at full mil, and of course the airplane is shaking like a full mil, 100%, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
We rolled down the runway, and I think it was an 11,000-foot runway. And I'm looking out the window counting the markers go by. At the 2,000 foot to go mark, I said, this guy is sure holding this airplane down. And then about the 1,000 foot marker, he rotates. And I feel the aircraft buffeting. But we finally, get airborne. When we get to Seattle, I happen to be right at the crew that got off the airplane. And I told the captain, I said, boy, that was a hairy takeoff back there in Tokyo. He said, yeah, we even had the stick shaker. The stick shaker on the airplane. Stall approach.
Oh, man.
And he was right at the cusp. And we were right there.
Just about to lose it.
Well, he wasn't going to lose it. He was right on the feather. I could feel it, so I knew what I was feeling.
Yeah.
But he had, indications in the cockpit with a stick shaker. Now, he couldn't push it forward, but there's the ocean right there. So the airplane just fought through it. But it was a good flight, a good crew, and I guess the temperature and the climatology just wasn't right for an early takeoff. He used every bit of that runway. And I think the aircraft was an old 707, the early four-engine Jobby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad he got it off the ground.
Oh, of course, yeah. In fact, his calculations were obviously more than mine because he knew he could get it airborne, I suppose, in pre-flight.
Describe your arrival on the other end and how you were welcomed or not.
I wasn't welcome at all. As a matter of fact, I was just glad things worked out like they did. What happened? We landed at SeaTac there in Washington?
Yeah.
And fortunately, I was able to catch an aircraft that took me from Washington to Los Angeles to Tucson. I didn't have to get off, thank goodness. And when I got off at Tucson, there was no crowd or anything, I just got off. And my wife met me at the airport, and we kissed and went home.
Home was then
Tucson, yes. On base, we lived on base, and they stayed on base while I was in Vietnam.
That was Luke?
No, Luke is in Phoenix area, Glendale really. But I was at Davis-Monthan in Tucson. Yeah. And I went back and ran the weapons school on the F-4 and did that until I left there and went to a war college. I've had pretty good contact with all my friends, but I'll tell you, they're going fast. And they're in their 70s. And I lost a dear friend, a Major General, who was with me. In fact, he went over with me and came back later. I got home a little before he did, and he just passed away about 3 months ago. And Major General Tom Swam, and he lived in the Plano area at the time of his passing. And then one of my backseaters passed. We had a slew of people who were there that wound up with prostate cancer at Cameron Bay. And I found out at a reunion that they were using Agent Orange for weed killer all over the base. Mm-hmm. So that was an exposure that some of us had that was not known or publicized. Yeah. And of course, I was one of the fortunate few that actually picked up prostate cancer, but I picked it up early. And that was 5 years ago. And I've been treated. I took the radiation option.
Did you have any difficulty readjusting to life after the war? I mean, I know you stayed in the Air Force.
Yeah, I had one. We had, it's sort of funny, but we had this reconstituted milk over there.
I remember that.
And I loved milk back in the day. And I couldn't wait to get home because the first thing I wanted was a tall glass of real milk. Cold. I had that and it just destroyed me. And I found out during that 10-month period I was over there, I became lactose intolerant. Oh my. Can you imagine? And of course,
somebody who loves milk.
Yeah. That was one thing that happened to me over there.
If that's all that happened, that ain't bad.
Yeah, that's right. I came back with sound mind and body, and Sure enough, I was back like 3 months, and General Disasway he was a commander of TAC at the time, made a visit to Tucson at Davis Mountain and pinned my Distinguished Flying Cross on me, which I thought was magnificent because,
Pretty good.
yeah,
Pretty high speed.
yeah.
Did your experience in Vietnam affect the way you think about veterans coming home from combat today?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think that the country owes an extreme debt of gratitude to the vets that have served in Vietnam, still, the vets that served in Afghanistan and Iraq, the vets that served in Panama. I mean, all of the contingencies where we have lost lives, and it's the veterans that paid, through the nose, if you will.
Yeah.
And this country owes, as I said, a debt of gratitude of all the veterans. I think all of the World War II veterans, World War I veterans are gone. There's still a few remaining World War II veterans. I don't know the number, but for example,
Fewer than a million.
Yeah, I went to the Tuskegee Airmen reunion last month before last, and there were about 60 some odd there that were still surviving after World War II.
Yeah.
And they paid a great debt during the time because they had a tough time coming back to a segregated America.
Exactly.
For example, yeah.
After you've been a fighter pilot, somebody gonna tell you to go to the back of the bus?
Yeah, that's right. That's hard to stomach, but it happened. It absolutely happened. And of course, many of those gentlemen took advantage of the GI Bill when they got back, and they're doctors, lawyers, all of those people who were denied their freedom, so to speak.
They were all high-achieving individuals.
To start with. Exactly, to start with. As a matter of
They
fact,
wouldn't have got in that outfit.
did you know there were some PhDs at the time in the Tuskegee Airmen Fighter Pilot Program?
I didn't know that, but
They had more degrees than the trainers.
Yeah.
In fact, I have a picture at home, I didn't bring that, of the first cadre at Tuskegee. And the whole cadre was white, military, all white except one guy, and he was a black officer. I don't know what his background was because I haven't asked. But the guy that sent it to me was with me in Vietnam. Forgive me, I just can't call his name. Different squadron, but his father is on that picture as an instructor,
As an instructor.
at Tuskegee.
Amazing man.
Yeah.
How do you think the Vietnam War is remembered in our society today?
I don't think it got the historical notoriety that other wars have gotten, because there's a whole class of people that didn't care at the time.
Didn't care
And
at the
now
time.
their children are now high school and college graduates who never have served anything.
Yeah.
Because see, the Vietnam War, because we didn't go out to really win the war, has left a bad taste in a lot of Americans' thought processes. And when you have that means you got to work through a couple of generations to get us back thinking the right way. And when I say the right way, I'm talking about the American way that existed during World War II. We were all pulled in together, and of course, we won that war, hands down. How many times in history have we liberated France, for example?
Well, a couple of times for sure.
You got that right. And I'm not knocking the French attitude or whatever, but they've never been a strong fighting force at the time.
Did you take away from your Vietnam experience more that was positive and useful than you invested in blood, sweat, and tears?
It taught me several things that I've hung on to throughout life. In other words, I became a real leader over there. I became a real aviator over there, where my skills were put to the test on a daily basis, where my thought processes were also put on display, if you will, as a leader, flight leader, director, assistant director of operations, a scheduler, and I made sure everybody got the missions they were supposed to get at the time they were supposed to get it. In other words, I instituted a system where it was a number system. If the number happened to be 205, the new guy that came in, he got that number, 205, because everybody else in the squadron had that same number. And when the flights came in, like the 206, you follow where I'm going with this? Now, there are other guys out of that 206 had 75 missions, for example, out of the 206. But there's one guy that had the 206. And the new guy also had the 206. So to keep everybody on an even basis, if you had so many counters up north, you got that number. And so I wouldn't be feeding another guy. I remember when I first got there, Ken Cartier wanted to get back home before Christmas. And of course, he leaned on me at base ops, and I understood exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted to finish up his tour with 200 missions so he wouldn't get called back. Because this was his second tour, a TDY in a war zone.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I think he was at his 97th on this second tour, 98th, something like that, when he got shot down.
Yeah.
And I was devastated, you know, because he had just a couple more to go before he came home. And then when he did come home, my wife Maddie and I met with him, went to visit him over at Holloman Air Base, Holloman Air Force Base. And that's where he was stationed when he, as we say, got out of jail and finished his reindoctrination, flight reindoctrination at Randolph.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and Ken, we can't get rid of each other. Yeah, we're always hooking up together somewhere.
What lessons did you take from the Vietnam War you would like to pass on to future generations of Americans?
Well, I think the fact that war is a very unpopular thing to be in, to start with. But then you have to let all of your personal feelings and attitudes go away because you're a warrior. And that's your job on this earth, is to win for the United States of America without any political interference, if you will. See, there are other means to obviate war, for example. And you're probably your strongest area that I was taught is the State Department, as far as diplomacy is concerned.
Diplomacy,
Yes,
negotiation.
exactly. You go through that, and if it comes to a fist fight, then you call on your warriors, and you get out of the way, because we'll take care of business. But if
that's the last card you play.
That's exactly right. But don't send us there with our arms tied behind our back, please. I say that to everybody that's in the political arena. Don't send your military to war unless you expect to win. Because we will do that for you if you untie our hands and give us total access to what we need to have access to. It's beautiful. My wife took some extremely good pictures of the whole, in fact, the World War II memorial, the Vietnam memorial. And in fact, I was living in D.C. when they dedicated that. I came to Plano in 2000.
Yeah.
So I lived for 20 years in Washington, well, in the outskirts of Washington, a place called Fort Washington. So I was in D.C. all the time. And of course, I was working for NASA, so I was downtown D.C. I was the director of aviation for NASA from 92 to 97. And I did that as a job, if you may say, to earn some money to augment my retirement pay, needless to say, and it worked. And then my last job in life so far has been as the interim president down at Texas Southern University in Houston. And I did that for about 18 months or so while the Board of Regents found a permanent president. And that was another experience. That was good.
Where is Texas Southern?
That's in Houston.
In
Yeah, Houston, right across the street. As a matter of fact, University of Houston shares a parking lot with Texas Southern right now.
Right.
It's just one street that crosses the two campuses.
Never been there, but I've been to Prairie View A&M.
Yeah, well, that's
when Beckton was.
yeah,
president.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, Beckton did a good job there too.
He did a good job there.
And sometimes, well, I'd like to say this. I think Texas is blessed with having so many retired military officers, that is, generals and admirals, because, you know, an admiral is now the University of Texas president. Did you know that?
That came out here.
The University of Texas has now, that's in Austin, has a Navy admiral as their president.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I have a brain cramp right now. I can't remember his name.
Can't remember his name.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I understand he's doing a miraculous job with the university. And most of us do. Being a university president is no different than being a wing commander. The same rules apply.
Except you got to go collect money.
Well, you have to collect money, bring in income, sure.
Yeah.
But you also have to convince the Senate Finance Committee, the House Appropriations Committee I may have the titles backwards, but you have to convince those folks every 2 years to give you what you need to operate. And we in the Air Force know how to do that because, you know, we've been in front of Congress many times. That is, the federal government many times as a lobbyist, if you will, for the services. That's why we have legislative liaison officers there in Washington, D.C.
Absolutely.
I think when you say 50 years, that encompasses at least 2 generations of people, maybe 3.
Yeah.
And the more that know about the 50th, the more the better.
Yeah.
And they'll realize that, hey, we may not have won the war, but we served honorably during that war.
And I'm not sure how many going to be around for the 60th.
That's right. Yeah. At 84, that means I'll be 94.
Ooh.
Who knows?
That's getting long in the tooth there, General.
Roger that.
Thank you.
My pleasure.